Hey folks, before the video starts, please leave a like and subscribe to cheer me up. Make sure you are relaxed and enjoy today's stories. I found a live stream of my neighbor's house on the dark web. They haven't come out since. I'm not the kind of person who normally messes with the dark web. You hear all these horror stories about hitmen for hire sites, cursed images, or live streams where awful things happen to people. I always figured most of it was just internet urban legend stuff. You know, the kind of thing that makes for a good YouTube rabbit hole at 2 a.m. But that all changed one night when my buddy Chris dared me to check it out for real. We were hanging out at my apartment, doing what we always do, swapping weird videos from Reddit and trying to out-creep each other. I had shown him this thread about a haunted doll on eBay that went viral, and he was like, "Nah man, if you want to see something really messed up, you gotta hit the dark web." Now, I know Chris talks out of his arse a lot, but something about the way he said it made me feel like he wasn't just pulling my leg this time. I don't know if it was boredom or just wanting to prove that I wasn't a wimp, but I said, "Alright, fine, show me." That was my first mistake. Chris told me to download Tor, the browser you need to access the dark web. At first, it felt like a joke. The websites were these clunky, old-school forums filled with bad links and scammy ads, promising all kinds of illegal stuff. It was mostly just junk. Chris was laughing the whole time, like this was just a game to him. But the longer I scrolled, the weirder it got. I started seeing links to places that gave me this gut feeling, like I wasn't supposed to be there. We were about to log off when Chris found it. It was this plain black website with nothing but one hyperlink on it. No context, no logo, just a sentence in bold red text. "Watch them until they move." I looked at Chris and raised an eyebrow. "What the hell is this?" "Let's find out," he grinned. I knew it was a bad idea. But before I could say anything, Chris clicked the link. The page opened to a live stream. At first, it looked like one of those low-quality security cam feeds you see in parking garages. The camera was positioned high up, angled toward what looked like a living room. The feed was grainy, but I could make out the details. Framed pictures on the walls, a bookshelf, a small coffee table, and a couch. But then I realized something. I recognized that couch. The floral pattern, the weird yellow stains on one of the cushions. It was identical to the one in my neighbor's house. "Wait a minute," I said, my stomach doing a little flip. "This looks like Mrs. Leclerc's place." Chris gave me a weird look. "What, your neighbor?" "Yeah," I said slowly. "She lives right across from me." I pointed out the window toward her house, visible from my living room. Chris just shrugged. "Weird coincidence, man. Lots of people have couches like that." But it wasn't just the couch. The room on the stream looked exactly like Mrs. Leclerc's living room. I knew, because I'd been in there a couple of times when she needed help carrying groceries or fixing her Wi-Fi. That's when I saw something that made my skin crawl. In the corner of the frame, there was a mirror hanging on the wall, and in that mirror, I could see the exact same curtains that were in her front window. Not similar curtains, the same ones, red with little gold flowers embroidered along the edges. This isn't a coincidence," I muttered. Chris leaned in, squinting at the screen. "Dude, are you saying this is your neighbor's house? Like, Liv?" I nodded slowly, my mouth suddenly dry. "Alright," he said, sitting back with a nervous laugh. "That's kind of freaky. But so what? Maybe she's streaming her house for some weird reason. That didn't make sense, though. Mrs. Leclerc was in her late 60s. She barely knew how to use her smartphone, let alone the dark web. There was no way she set this up herself. We sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the empty living room on the screen. Nothing was happening. No one came in or out, just the faint sound of the clock ticking in the background. And then I noticed something even stranger. There were no lights on in the room. It was night outside, and yet everything was perfectly visible, like the camera wasn't just recording in the dark, it was seeing through it. My skin prickled. "All right, this is getting weird," I whispered. I reached for my mouse to close the window, but Chris grabbed my wrist. "Wait," he said. "Look." Something had moved. In the bottom corner of the screen, near the hallway, there was a shadow, just for a second. It was subtle, like someone or something had just passed by the camera's blind spot, but then it was gone, leaving the room as still and empty as before. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. "Maybe it's just her," Chris said, though his voice didn't sound as confident now. "No," I whispered. "Mrs. Leclerc hasn't left the house in days." I thought she was on vacation. We both stared at the screen, waiting. But nothing else happened. Just the sound of that clock ticking away in the background. I finally pulled the plug and closed the browser. "Yeah, I'm done with this," I said, standing up and pacing the room. "This is too weird." Chris tried to play it off, like it was no big deal, but I could tell it freaked him out too. We agreed to forget about it, to chalk it up to some elaborate prank or a weird coincidence. But even after Chris left, I couldn't stop thinking about that live stream. I kept looking out my window toward Mrs. Leclerc's house. It was completely dark. No movement, no lights, just those red curtains hanging there like they always did. And the worst part, I hadn't seen Mrs. Leclerc in almost a week. I should have left it alone. I should have just turned off my computer and gone to bed. But I didn't. Instead, I went back to the website the next night, and that's when things got a lot worse. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It's hard to explain, but it was like an itch in the back of my brain, this gnawing curiosity that wouldn't let me focus on anything else. I told myself I was overthinking it, but every time I glanced at Mrs. Leclerc's house from my window, my stomach did that weird flip again. The house looked too quiet, too still. No lights, no movement, no sound. I hadn't heard her noisy old air conditioner kick on all day, which was weird because she kept that thing running 24/7, even in October. The mail was piling up in her box by the front door, and her car hadn't moved from the driveway. I told myself she was probably just visiting family or something, but it didn't sit right. And I couldn't stop thinking about that live stream. By nightfall, I cracked. I knew it was stupid. I knew I was just being paranoid. But I couldn't help myself. I opened my laptop, fired up Tor, and went back to the site. The same black screen greeted me, with the same red text. "Watch them until they move." I clicked the link. The stream loaded instantly, and there it was again. Mrs. Leclerc's living room, frozen in time. Same angle, same eerie stillness. Nothing had changed from the night before, except for one small detail. The clock on the wall was gone. That might not sound like a big deal, but I swear it was there yesterday. I remember hearing it tick. It was one of those old-fashioned wall clocks, the kind with a pendulum swinging back and forth. But now there was just a clean, empty spot on the wall, as if it had never been there at all. I felt my pulse quicken. Something wasn't right. I leaned closer, scanning the screen for any other changes, and that's when I noticed it. The framed photos on the bookshelf were missing too. There had been 3 of them last night. A picture of Mrs. Leclerc with her grandkids, a wedding photo, and a black and white one of a little boy with a dog. I remember them clearly. But now, gone. The bookshelf was empty, as if someone had deliberately cleared it out. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe the camera was streaming from a different day, or maybe the video was on a loop. But that didn't explain why the clock was ticking yesterday and gone today. And it didn't explain what I saw next. In the corner of the room, near the hallway, something had changed. At first, I couldn't tell what it was. Then it hit me. The door to the basement was open. It hadn't been open last night. I was sure of it. The door was always closed. Mrs. Leclerc told me once that the basement creeped her out, and she never went down there unless she absolutely had to. Now, it was wide open, and from the angle of the camera, I could just barely see part of the staircase leading down into the dark. I swallowed hard. Every instinct in my body told me to shut the laptop and walk away. But I didn't. I just sat there, watching, waiting. My heart was pounding so hard, I could hear it in my ears. That's when the camera started glitching. The video stuttered for a second. Just a quick flicker, like a bad internet connection. But when the stream came back, something was different. There was a chair in the middle of the room. I know it wasn't there before. I would have noticed it. It was one of those old wooden rocking chairs, the kind that creaks with every movement. It was facing away from the camera, pointed toward the open basement door. I stared at it, my palms slick with sweat. Had someone moved it there? How? I hadn't seen anyone on the stream. The room was completely empty when I started watching, but now there was this chair, sitting dead center in the frame, like it was waiting for someone. And then, slowly, so slowly I almost missed it, the chair began to rock. It was the faintest movement, just a gentle creak, back and forth, like someone had barely nudged it. But there was no one there, at least, not that I could see. I felt my throat tighten. I leaned in closer, my eyes glued to the screen, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The rocking continued, slow and steady, the wood groaning with each shift. Then the camera glitched again, just a brief flicker. But when the stream came back, the chair was facing the camera. I jerked back in my seat, my heart hammering against my ribs. The chair hadn't just turned slightly. It had fully rotated to face the camera, as if whoever or whatever had moved it wanted me to know it was watching. For a moment, I thought I saw something, a faint shadow, flickering just behind the chair. But before I could get a good look, it vanished. I sat frozen, unsure what to do. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what was happening. Was this some kind of prank? A pre-recorded video? Or was I seeing something I wasn't supposed to see? And then it happened. The basement door slammed shut. It happened so fast, I almost didn't register it. 1 second, the door was open. The next, it was shut, with a deafening bang that made me jump in my seat. The chair stopped rocking, and the room went still. I stared at the screen, my breath shallow and ragged. My brain was screaming at me to close the browser, to unplug my laptop, and pretend this never happened. But I couldn't look away. Something was keeping me glued to that screen, like a moth to a flame. That's when I noticed the audio. It had been faint before, just a soft hum of background noise. But now, I could hear something else. A voice. It was so quiet I had to strain to hear it, but it was definitely there. This low, raspy whisper. just barely audible over the static. I leaned in closer, my pulse pounding in my ears. The voice was speaking, repeating the same phrase over and over again, like a broken record. Come downstairs, come downstairs, come downstairs. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking. I sat there in the dark, heart racing, struggling to catch my breath. What the hell had I just seen? I glanced out my window toward Mrs. Leclerc's house. It was just as dark and silent as before. No movement, no lights. I told myself it was just a dream, just a weird hallucination from lack of sleep. But deep down, I knew the truth. Something was wrong in that house, and whatever was in the basement, it knew I was watching. After slamming my laptop shut, I sat there in complete silence, trying to convince myself I hadn't just witnessed something horrifying. I kept telling myself it was some weird prank, or maybe I was hallucinating from sleep deprivation. But no amount of logic made the goosebumps on my arms go away. I got up, pacing the room, glancing out my window toward Mrs. Leclerc's house. It looked just as dark and dead as before. But now, it felt different, like the silence was too heavy, too deliberate, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I stood by the window for a long time, staring at that dark, empty house, waiting for any sign of movement. There was none, at least not from the house. That's when I saw it. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, but as I squinted through the darkness, my stomach lurched. In one of the upstairs windows, just for a split second, I saw something move. It wasn't a person. It was wrong. It was this black, shifting shape, almost like smoke, but thicker, denser. It melted and twisted in the shadows, just beyond the glass, and then it was gone. My heart skipped a beat. I kept staring at the window, waiting for it to reappear, but the darkness just stared back, silent and still. I told myself I must have imagined it, but deep down, I knew better. Something was inside that house. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every creak of the building made my nerves jump. I sat in the dark, listening for anything, any noise from outside, any sign that Mrs. Leclerc had come home, or that something was moving in her house again. But all I heard was the wind rattling the windows and the occasional hum of my refrigerator. Morning eventually came, and the daylight helped a little. But the uneasy feeling didn't go away. I kept staring at Mrs. Leclerc's house from my window, hoping to see her come outside, hoping for anything that would make me feel like things were normal again. She didn't come out. By noon, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for answers. I decided to walk over and knock on her door, just to check on her, see if she was all right. If nothing else, it would put my mind at ease. It was a terrible idea. I stood on her porch, staring at the front door. There was no sound from inside the house. No TV, no footsteps, no shuffling, just silence. The longer I stood there, the more I wanted to turn around and go back to my apartment, but I forced myself to knock. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. I tried the doorknob, fully expecting it to be locked, but to my surprise, it turned with a soft click. The door swung open with a groan, revealing the dim interior of the house. "Mrs. Leclerc," I called out, my voice echoing through the quiet. No response. I stepped inside, the floor creaking under my weight. The air smelled stale, like the house had been sealed up for months. Dust hung in the light streaming through the windows, and the silence felt oppressive, like a thick blanket draped over everything. That's when I saw it, the chair from the live stream. It was sitting in the exact same spot, right in the center of the living room, facing the basement door. And just like on the stream, the basement door was wide open. My heart was racing, and every instinct in my body told me to turn around and leave. But something pulled me forward, like I was being drawn deeper into the house. The chair creaked softly as I stepped past it, like it had been waiting for me. I stopped in front of the basement door, staring down into the darkness. I couldn't see anything beyond the first few steps. It was just a yawning black void that seemed to swallow the light. That's when I heard it. A faint, raspy whisper drifting up from the basement. "Come downstairs." I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. There was no way in hell I was going down there. I spun on my heel, ready to bolt out of the house. But then I saw something that made my blood run cold. The clock. It was sitting on the floor, right where the bookshelf used to be. The pendulum swung slowly, back and forth, even though the clock had no batteries. I stood frozen, staring at the clock, and then it stopped. Just stopped. The pendulum stilled mid-swing, like someone had pressed pause on reality. And that's when I felt it. Something brushed past me. It was subtle, like a gust of cold air, but it was enough to make every hair on my body stand on end. I could feel it, this presence standing just behind me, lingering in the doorway to the basement. I didn't dare turn around. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I could feel something watching me, leaning closer, waiting for me to make a move. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A shadow stretched across the floor, long and thin, slithering up the walls like smoke. It didn't move like a normal shadow. It was slow, deliberate, almost as if it was alive. It crawled toward the chair in the middle of the room, and the chair began to rock. I bolted. I didn't stop to close the door behind me. I ran out of the house, across the street, and back into my apartment, slamming the door shut behind me. My heart felt like it was going to explode out of my chest, and my hands were shaking so badly I could barely lock the door. I collapsed onto the couch, gasping for air, my mind racing. What the hell had I just seen? Was it real? Had I just imagined it? I sat there for what felt like hours, staring out the window at Mrs. Leclerc's house. Nothing moved. The house remained dark, silent, and still, like it always had been. But as I sat there, trying to convince myself I was safe, I noticed something new. The basement window. It was open, and someone was staring out from the shadows, watching me. I didn't move from the couch for what felt like hours. I sat frozen, my eyes locked on the basement window across the street. The figure inside wasn't moving. It was just watching me. Even though I couldn't make out the details, I knew it wasn't Mrs. Leclerc. The shape was wrong. Too tall, too still. And its face, if it had one, was lost in the shadows, as if the darkness inside the basement refused to let it be seen. But I could feel its gaze on me, sharp and unblinking, like it had been waiting for me to notice it. The worst part? It knew exactly where I lived. I scrambled off the couch and yanked the curtain shut, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My heart was racing, and my hands were clammy with sweat. I felt like a little kid again, hiding under the covers from some monster in the closet. But deep down, I knew that closing the curtains wouldn't change a thing. Whatever was in that basement, it knew I had seen it. And I had the sickening feeling that it wasn't going to stay on the other side of the street for long. I paced the room, chewing my nails and trying to figure out what to do. Call the cops. What would I even say? that I saw something weird in my neighbor's basement, that her house was on a dark web livestream, they'd think I was crazy, or worse, that I was the one doing something illegal. No, I couldn't call the cops. I needed proof. Something solid that would back up what I'd seen. That's when it hit me. The live stream. If the stream was still running, I could record it. I could show someone what was happening. Prove that something was seriously wrong in that house. I grabbed my laptop and flipped it open, my fingers fumbling as I launched Tor again. I didn't want to go back to that site, but I didn't have a choice. I needed answers, no matter how terrifying they were. The screen loaded, and there it was again. The same black background, the same red text. Watch them until they move. I clicked the link, holding my breath. The stream loaded instantly. At first, everything looked the same. The dim living room, the rocking chair sitting in the middle of the frame, the basement door hanging wide open. But something had changed. Something small, but wrong. The chair was closer to the camera. It wasn't by much, just a few inches, but it was definitely closer than before, like it had been dragged toward the camera while I wasn't looking. And then, from deep inside the house, I heard it again, the whisper. It was clearer this time, still faint, but unmistakable. Come downstairs. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering in my chest. Something told me that if I kept watching, I was going to see something I couldn't unsee. And then, in the corner of the screen, it moved. It started as a shadow at the top of the basement stairs, just a faint, flickering shape, like the afterimage of a person. But then it stepped fully into view, and my stomach dropped. It was tall, too tall to be human. Its limbs were impossibly long, with elbows and knees that seemed to bend the wrong way. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, and stretched too tightly over its frame, as if it had been wrapped in a thin layer of wax. But it was the face that made me want to slam the laptop shut and run. There wasn't one. There were no eyes, no mouth, no nose, just a smooth, featureless surface, like someone had wiped away every trace of humanity. And yet, I knew it was watching me. I could feel it. The thing stood at the top of the basement stairs for a moment, swaying gently, like it was adjusting to the light. Then, without warning, it began to move towards the camera, fast. The stream flickered, the video stuttering as the creature lurched forward, its long limbs folding and unfolding like a nightmare puppet. I leaned closer to the screen, my heart pounding in my ears, and that's when I noticed something that nearly made me vomit. The thing wasn't just coming toward the camera, it was looking for something. Its head jerked from side to side, its neck twisting at unnatural angles, like it was scanning the room, searching. And then, slowly, it turned its featureless face toward the window, the same window that looked out toward my apartment. I slammed the laptop shut, panic exploding in my chest. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely breathe. It had seen me. I didn't know how or what that thing was, but somehow it knew I was watching, and now it was coming. I could feel it. I ran to the window and peeked through the curtain, heart hammering in my chest. For a moment, everything was still. Then I saw it, a figure standing on the sidewalk, just outside Mrs. Leclerc's house. It was hard to make out in the darkness, but I knew it wasn't her. It was too tall, too thin, and it was facing my apartment. I stumbled backward, my mind racing. I needed to get out. I needed to go somewhere, anywhere, before that thing reached me. But before I could move, I heard a noise that stopped me in my tracks. It was coming from the hallway outside my apartment. A slow, deliberate knock. Knock, knock, knock. I froze, every muscle in my body locking up. My mind screamed at me not to open the door. I knew what was waiting on the other side, but the knocking didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent. Knock, knock, knock. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I stood there, holding my breath, listening to the heavy quiet that pressed in from all sides. And then I heard the whisper. "Come downstairs." The voice wasn't coming from the live stream this time. It was coming from the other side of my door. The whisper on the other side of the door felt like ice running down my spine. "Come downstairs." I stood frozen, every instinct in my body screaming to run, to hide, to do anything but open that door. My apartment felt suddenly too small, like the walls were closing in. I held my breath, straining to listen, trying to make out any sound from the hallway beyond the door. Nothing. Just silence. And then the doorknob started to turn. The metal clicked softly, the knob twisting, as if someone or something was slowly, methodically testing it, making sure it wasn't locked. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My feet felt like they were bolted to the floor, my brain caught in some terrible limbo between fight and flight. Click. The knob twisted further. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the coffee table. My hands fumbled for my phone, but my mind was racing too fast to think straight. I needed to do something, anything, before the door swung open and whatever was on the other side stepped inside. Without thinking, I did the only thing I could. I locked the deadbolt. The click of the bolt sliding into place echoed through the silent room like a gunshot, and the doorknob stopped turning. For a moment, there was only silence. Then I heard it, breathing. It was soft at first, just a faint rasp, but it grew louder, more labored, as if whatever was on the other side of the door was leaning closer, pressing its face against the wood. I backed away slowly, clutching my phone so tightly my fingers ached. My eyes flicked to the window, hoping to see some sign of life outside, some proof that the world hadn't gone completely insane. But the street was empty, and the figure that had been standing outside Mrs. Leclerc's house, gone. I swallowed hard, forcing my brain to work through the terror. I had to think. I had to do something. The live stream. If the stream was still up, maybe I could see what was happening outside my door. Maybe it would give me some kind of clue, some way to escape. I opened my laptop again, my hand shaking so badly I could barely type. The browser loaded, and I clicked back to the site. The stream came up instantly, and the image that greeted me almost made me slam the laptop shut again. The camera was no longer pointed at Mrs. Leclerc's living room. It was pointed directly at my apartment door. I felt the world tilt beneath me. The view on the screen showed the hallway just outside my door, perfectly framed, as if someone had placed the camera there on purpose. And standing in front of the door, one long pale hand resting on the doorknob, was the thing from the basement. It was taller than I remembered, its limbs impossibly thin, its smooth, featureless face tilting slightly as if listening. The way it stood, completely motionless except for the slow rise and fall of its chest, was more terrifying than any wild, violent movement could have been. It knew I was inside, and it was waiting. I stared at the screen, paralyzed. My breath came in short, shallow gasps, and my mind raced, trying to figure out how the camera could be there, how it was even possible. And then the thing on the screen did something that made my blood run cold. It turned toward the camera. It knew it was being watched. For a moment, it just stared. Or at least, it gave the impression that it was staring, even without eyes. Then it slowly raised one long, thin finger to where its mouth should have been, and made a shushing motion, as if to say, "Don't scream." The camera flickered, and for a brief moment, the image glitched, just long enough for me to catch a glimpse of something even worse. There wasn't just one of them. In the glitchy frame, I saw more shadows in the hallway, twisted shapes, lurking just out of sight, slithering along the walls and ceiling. They were waiting too, silent, patient. And then the stream stabilized, and it was just the creature by the door again, standing perfectly still. My heart pounded in my chest. I knew, somehow, I knew that if I stayed here, if I kept watching, it would get in. I had to leave. Now I grabbed my phone and shoved it into my pocket, then reached for my jacket, my mind screaming at me to move faster. I had no plan. I just knew I couldn't stay here. The apartment felt suffocating, like the walls were pressing in on me. Every creak of the building sounded like footsteps. Every shift of the shadows felt like it was going to reach out and grab me. As I reached the front door, I hesitated for just a second. What if it was still out there? I pressed my ear to the wood, straining to hear. Nothing. No whispers, no breathing, just silence. I took a deep breath, unlocked the deadbolt, and threw the door open. The hallway was empty. No sign of the creature. No shadows lurking in the corners. Just the same old dingy hallway I'd walked through 1,000 times before. But something didn't feel right. I could still feel it. The presence, the weight of something watching me, pressing down on my shoulders like a hand. I knew it was still nearby. Maybe just out of sight. Maybe waiting for me to make a mistake. I didn't wait to find out. I ran. I bolted down the stairs, my footsteps echoing in the narrow stairwell. I didn't stop until I was outside, gasping for air in the cool night breeze. The street was dark and empty, and the only sound was the distant hum of traffic. For a moment, I let myself believe I was safe. But then I looked across the street and saw that the basement window in Mrs. Leclerc's house was still open, and there, just behind the glass, I saw it. The creature. It was watching me, and it was smiling, or at least it felt like it was smiling. I couldn't see a mouth, but I could feel the intent behind its smooth, blank face, like a hunter watching its prey. Then, slowly, it raised one hand and waved. I turned and ran, my heart hammering in my chest, my mind racing with one terrible thought. It let me go, not because I escaped, but because it knew I would come back. I don't know what happened to Mrs. Leclerc. I haven't seen her, and the house across the street remains dark and silent. But I know, deep down, that this isn't over. The thing in the basement, it's waiting. And one day, when the time is right, it will call for me again. And this time, I won't be able to resist. I signed up for a freelance job on the dark web. I think I just helped commit a crime. Alright, let me preface this by saying I'm not a tech expert or a hacker. I'm just your average broke college grad, juggling side hustles and scraping by with whatever freelance gigs I can find. You know those sites where people offer jobs for a quick buck, like posting reviews or transcribing audio? Yeah, I'm all over those. But about 2 months ago, I ran into something weird. I still don't know how deep I've gotten myself into, but it's starting to feel dangerous. So, This all started because of a random YouTube rabbit hole. One video led to another, and before I knew it, I was watching this dude explaining how people make real money on the dark web. Now, let's be clear. I've always thought the dark web was just a place for drugs, fake IDs, and shady stuff. But this guy claimed there were also legitimate freelance gigs there. He said companies sometimes need things done discreetly, stuff they can't post on normal sites, and they're willing to pay stupid amounts of money for it. And look, I was desperate. I hadn't paid rent for 2 months. My phone bill was overdue. The electric company was this close to shutting off my power, so I thought, screw it, let's check it out. It wasn't that hard to access the dark web. Just download Tor, follow some sketchy links, and boom, you're there. I spent a few hours clicking through forums and markets, but everything looked too sketchy. Drugs, weapons, hitmen, which I'm 99% sure are fake. I was about to give up when I found a job board that seemed different. It was called Blind Match. The concept was simple. You sign up anonymously, and people post weird, vague tasks. Stuff like, translate this document, or run a web search and compile info. The catch: you don't know who the client is, and they don't know who you are. It's all anonymous and done through encrypted messages. Honestly, it felt more like Craigslist than some sinister dark web stuff. Anyway, after scrolling through a few listings, I found a job that caught my attention. It read, looking for someone detail-oriented. $500 upfront. Task: copy data into a spreadsheet. Takes 1 to 2 hours. $500 for just copying some data. Hell yes. I could knock that out in an afternoon. No problem. So, I clicked the apply button, filled out a brief form, and sent it off. Within 10 minutes, I got a reply. Accepted. Your first half payment will arrive shortly. Do not discuss this task with anyone. And just like that, $250 landed in my Bitcoin wallet. No delays, no weird conditions. It was so easy that it almost felt suspicious. But money's money, right? They attached a small file called Task1Zip to the message, with instructions to transfer the contents into an Excel spreadsheet they provided. It sounded simple enough, just copy-pasting data. I figured it might be boring corporate stuff. Maybe they didn't want a paper trail, or were outsourcing confidential work on the down low. I didn't care. Rent was due, and this was my lifeline. But here's where things started to feel off. When I opened the zip file, there were a bunch of text documents inside. At first, I thought it was financial data, just a list of random names and numbers. But the deeper I got into it, the weirder it got. There were names, hundreds of them. Next to each name was a string of letters and numbers, like tracking codes or maybe ID numbers. I figured it was harmless, like some internal system at a logistics company. I mean, big companies track people and packages all the time, right? But some of the entries had extra notes in parentheses, things like request pending, in transit, delayed, notify client, completed, transfer confirmed. It made my skin crawl for no reason I could explain. The language felt cold, like these weren't just packages. But again, I told myself I was just being paranoid. I mean, it's not like I was doing anything illegal. I was just a freelancer copying data. Still, something nagged at me. I wanted to know more about the client, but the only info I had was their username, Mantis_7. No photo, no bio, nothing, just that weird name. I even Googled some of the names from the documents, but nothing came up. Just random people. Some with social media accounts, some without. There was no pattern, no obvious connection between them. After about 2 hours, I finished the task, uploaded the spreadsheet to the link they'd provided, and sent them a message. Job complete. Please confirm. Within minutes, I got a reply. Received. Second half of payment will arrive shortly. And sure enough, the remaining $250 hit my Bitcoin wallet. I closed my laptop, feeling relieved. Easiest $500 I'd ever made. But there was still this nagging unease in the back of my mind. I told myself it was just first-time jitters. I mean, it was the dark web after all. But that was when I noticed something weird. While I was working, I'd left my phone on silent. When I finally checked it, I saw I'd missed 2 calls from an unknown number. No voicemail, no text, nothing. Just 2 calls, spaced exactly 5 minutes apart. I thought it was a coincidence at first. Maybe a scam call or telemarketer. But then I noticed that one of the numbers from the spreadsheet matched the last 4 digits of the phone number that had called me. Okay, so now I'm freaked out. I don't know if I'm overthinking it or if something really weird is going on. I thought about ignoring it and just moving on with my life. But that weird, gnawing feeling wouldn't go away. I told myself it was just a coincidence, but what are the odds? I thought about texting the number back, but something told me not to. Instead, I spent the rest of the night Googling stuff about the dark web and freelance jobs. The more I read, the more paranoid I got. There were stories of people getting wrapped up in shady work without even knowing it. Some guy in a forum claimed he'd done something similar, entered a bunch of data for a logistics company, and 2 weeks later, the FBI showed up at his door. He said it turned out the data he'd entered was part of a human trafficking ring, and the people on the spreadsheet were victims being transported across borders. I don't know if his story was real or just some creep trying to scare people, but it made me sick to my stomach. I couldn't sleep that night. My brain kept going in circles. What if the names I typed out weren't just names? What if I'd just helped coordinate something terrible? The worst part? The money was real. $500 sitting in my Bitcoin wallet. I could cash it out right now if I wanted, but at what cost? And then, just before I finally managed to drift off to sleep, I got another message on Blind Match. Good work. We'll have another task for you soon. I couldn't sleep after that first job. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see those lists of names, the weird notes next to them, and that phone call with the matching digits. My gut was screaming at me to just delete everything, wipe my laptop, and pretend none of it ever happened. But I didn't. The thing is, $500 felt like a lifeline. It made my rent just a little less terrifying, and part of me was trying to convince myself I was being paranoid. People pay for weird things all the time, right? Not everything has to be sinister, but deep down, I knew something was off. Then, 2 days after the first task, I got another message on Blind Match. We have another assignment, $1,500, same process, more data, $1,500. I stared at the message for a solid 5 minutes, weighing my options. That amount of money would solve every problem I had. Phone bill, paid, groceries, stocked. I could even put something towards next month's rent. I wanted to say no. Really, I did. But the thing is, when you're desperate, your brain finds ways to justify anything. I figured, it's just more data entry. Maybe the last job was weird, but nothing bad happened. That's how I rationalized it, at least. So, Like an idiot, I accepted the task. Within 5 minutes, the first half payment landed in my Bitcoin wallet, $750 upfront. The job details arrived right after that. Another zip file with a new spreadsheet. This time, though, the contents were even stranger. It wasn't just names and numbers this time. There were addresses, dozens of them. Some were in the US, but others were scattered across Europe, South America, and Asia. The names felt random, just like before. But now each one had an address and what looked like a timestamp next to it. Here's an example of what I was looking at. Gregory Barnes, 412, Overlook Drive, Kansas City, Missouri. Scheduled, October 14th, 2024, 3 a.m. Elena Viskova, Ulika Tveskaya, Moscow, Russia. Pending, Benito Ramirez, Cale Juarez, Mexico City, Mexico. Confirmed, October 10th, 2024, 2:30 a.m. And those were just a few. There were dozens of entries like that. What the hell kind of company tracks people down to the exact minute like this? That's when the anxiety hit me, like a truck. My brain started throwing out worst-case scenarios left and right. I thought back to that creepy forum post about trafficking. Were these addresses drop points? Were these people being moved somehow? Or worse, was I helping track their movements for whoever hired me? But then I'd catch myself. I mean, who would trust a random freelancer like me with something so serious? It didn't make sense. Maybe it was just logistics data, some kind of weird delivery tracking, or a prank. I told myself I was overthinking it again, but my hands were clammy the entire time I copied the data into the spreadsheet. I felt like I was being watched, like someone was standing just behind me, breathing down my neck. Every keystroke felt heavier than it should have. When I was about halfway through the task, I heard something that made my heart drop. A car door slammed outside my apartment. I live on the 3rd floor of a small complex, and I know what my neighbors' cars sound like. This wasn't one of them. I froze, my hands hovering over the keyboard, and just listened. For a minute, there was nothing but silence. Then, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, right outside my door. Now, I don't scare easily, but this was different. My apartment is at the very end of a long hallway. If you're at my door, you're either lost or you're here on purpose. I sat there perfectly still, hoping they'd go away. But they didn't. The footsteps stopped directly in front of my door. For the longest 30 seconds of my life, all I could hear was the faint sound of someone breathing through the door. And then, 2 knocks. Not loud, not frantic, just 2 soft knocks, like whoever was out there knew I was inside and was waiting for me to answer. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I just stared at the door like it was going to burst open at any second. After what felt like forever, I heard the footsteps again, this time moving away. The sound of them echoed all the way down the hall until they finally disappeared. Then came the car door again, and the hum of an engine as it pulled away. I stayed frozen in my chair for at least another 5 minutes, waiting to see if whoever it was would come back. When they didn't, I slowly crept over to the window and peeked through the blinds. Nothing. No strange cars. No one in sight. Just the empty parking lot. By that point, I was shaking. I couldn't tell if I'd just dodged a bullet or if I was making something out of nothing. Maybe it was just a delivery driver who got the wrong door, right? But 2 knocks? No packages. It didn't sit right with me. I went back to my laptop, determined to finish the task and be done with it. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely type, but I pushed through. The second I uploaded the completed spreadsheet, I got a reply. Confirmed. Good work. And then, your final payment will arrive shortly. Stand by for further instructions. I stared at the message for a long time. Further instructions. I hadn't agreed to anything else. The payment hit my Bitcoin wallet a few minutes later. Another $750. But all I could focus on was that last sentence. Then, just as I was about to close my laptop, I got another message. Expect a package at your door within the next 48 hours. Do not open it until instructed. At that point, I'd had enough. My heart was pounding out of my chest. Every instinct I had was telling me to cut and run, delete everything, block the client, wipe my computer clean. But the problem was, I'd already accepted the money, and whoever these people were, they knew my address. I didn't sleep that night. Every little sound, every creak of the apartment, every car passing outside made me jump. I kept replaying those knocks in my head, wondering what would have happened if I'd answered the door. By the time morning rolled around, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for their package. I was going to get out of town, stay with a friend, and figure out what to do next. Maybe I could disappear for a while, let this whole thing blow over. But just as I was packing my bag, I got one last message. Package out for delivery. Track progress here. Link. I clicked the link without thinking, and the tracking page loaded. Estimated delivery, October 14th, 2024, 3 a.m. That was tonight. And then I saw the destination address. It wasn't just my apartment building, it was my unit number. I spent the rest of the day pacing my apartment, trying to figure out what the hell to do. Every few minutes, I'd glance at the tracking link, half hoping the delivery would get delayed or cancelled. But it didn't. The page kept updating in real time, showing the driver's progress. Out for delivery. 2 stops away. I thought about leaving, just grabbing my stuff and bolting, but my mind kept circling back to one thing. If I disappeared, would they come after me? They had my address, my name. They knew how to reach me, and God only knew what they'd do if I ran. The worst part was how organized it all seemed. This wasn't just some random scam or prank. Whoever these people were, they were precise, calculated. They'd paid me in full, tracked me down, and now a package was on its way, scheduled to arrive at exactly 3 a.m. Something told me that if I wasn't there to receive it, things would get much, much worse. So, like an idiot, I stayed. By 2:30 a.m., the anxiety was eating me alive. I had all the lights off, sitting in the dark with the curtains drawn, trying to calm my breathing. The glow from the tracking page on my laptop was the only light in the room. One stop away, I felt like I was sitting on a bomb, just waiting for it to go off. Every fiber of my being was screaming to get out of there, but my legs wouldn't move. I told myself I'd take the package, throw it in a dumpster, and be done with it. No way was I opening it. No way was I going to follow whatever creepy instructions came next. And then, at exactly 2:59 a.m., I heard it. The soft hum of a car pulling up outside. My stomach dropped. I muted my phone and crept toward the window, peeking through the blinds just enough to see the street below. A black car was parked directly in front of my building, its headlights off. I couldn't make out the driver, just a dark silhouette sitting behind the wheel. No delivery logo on the car, no markings. It wasn't a delivery vehicle. I ducked down just as the car door opened. A man stepped out, carrying a small package under one arm. He was tall, wearing a hoodie, with the hood pulled low over his face. I couldn't see his features, but there was something off about the way he moved. Slow, deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. He walked straight toward my building, not checking any other doors or units. He knew exactly where he was going. I scrambled back to my desk, heart hammering in my chest. The tracking page refreshed one last time. Delivered. Before I could process what was happening, there were 2 knocks on my door. Same as before. Software precise. 2 knocks, then nothing. I stared at the door, my hands trembling. My mind raced with 1,000 different thoughts. Do I answer? Do I ignore it? Do I run? But before I could decide, I heard something that made my skin crawl. A small scraping sound, like the package was being dragged across the floor. Then, the faintest click, the sound of something being slid under the door. I sat there frozen as the footsteps retreated down the hall. The front door to the building opened and closed, and the car outside started up. Within seconds, it was gone. I waited another 5 minutes before I dared to move. When I finally worked up the courage, I crawled toward the door on my hands and knees, my heart pounding so hard it felt like my chest would explode. There, just inside the door, was a small brown package. No labels, no markings, just a plain cardboard box, sealed with black tape. I sat there, staring at the box, too scared to touch it. A million thoughts were running through my head. What if it was a bomb? What if it was filled with drugs? What if there was something worse inside? Something alive? My phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. It was a new message from Blind Match. Open the package. Follow instructions carefully. I felt sick. My hands were slick with sweat, and my head was spinning. Part of me wanted to throw the thing out the window, but I knew that wouldn't be the end of it. Whoever these people were, they wouldn't just go away. I needed to know what was inside. With shaking hands, I grabbed the box and carried it to the kitchen. I grabbed a knife from the drawer, slid it under the black tape, and sliced the box open. Inside, there was nothing but a cheap disposable phone. One of those prepaid burner phones you get at gas stations. No charger, no SIM card, just the phone, powered on, with a single unread text message on the screen. Call the number listed. Say exactly what you're told. Do not ask questions. My heart was racing so fast, I thought I might pass out. I knew, deep down, that this was a line I shouldn't cross. Whatever I was involved in, it was bad. Really bad. But at this point, I felt trapped. They had my address. They knew where I lived. And for all I knew, they were watching me right now, waiting to see what I'd do next. I sat down at the table, took a deep breath, and opened the text message. There was just a single number. No name, no country code, just 10 digits. My thumb hovered over the call button for what felt like an eternity. I knew the moment I pressed it, there was no going back, but I had no choice. With a shaky breath, I hit call. The phone rang once, twice. Then, on the third ring, someone answered. At first, there was nothing but silence on the other end. No background noise, no breathing, just dead air. I opened my mouth to say something, but before I could, a voice cut through the silence. It was a man's voice, low and deliberate. He spoke slowly, like he was reading from a script. Say, the package is delivered, awaiting further instructions. I felt cold all over. My mouth was dry, and my hands were clammy. I forced the words out, my voice barely above a whisper. The package is delivered, awaiting further instructions. The line went silent again. For a moment, I thought they'd hung up. Then, the man spoke again. Do not leave your apartment. Do not contact anyone. You will receive instructions soon. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I sat there, holding the phone, my heart pounding in my ears. I knew, without a doubt, that whatever was happening, it was far from over, and now I was in way too deep to back out. After the phone call ended, the silence in my apartment became suffocating. Every sound, every creak of the walls, every hum from the fridge felt too loud, like the building itself was holding its breath. I just sat there, gripping the burner phone, trying to process what had just happened. I told myself, I could still back out. I could leave right now. But that voice on the phone, the calm, deliberate way it spoke, made it clear they weren't giving me a choice. Whoever these people were, they weren't amateurs. They knew how to control people, how to make you feel like running wasn't an option. And worst of all, I believed them. For the next couple of hours, I just sat in my kitchen, staring at the phone. My laptop was still open on the desk, the tracking page frozen on delivered. The minutes dragged by, but the anxiety never faded. Every time a car drove by outside, I tensed up, waiting for something, anything, to happen. At around 5 a.m., the burner phone buzzed. New message. You are being watched. Do not attempt to leave the apartment. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. My whole body went cold. I glanced around the room, heart pounding, suddenly hyper-aware of my surroundings. Were there cameras in here? Were they outside, watching me from across the street? I got up, moving slowly, and checked every window in the apartment. I peeked through the curtains, scanning the parking lot below. Nothing. No cars. No people. Just the dim orange glow of the streetlights, flickering in the early morning haze. But something didn't feel right. I live on the 3rd floor, so I should have had a good view of the entire lot. But one of the streetlights, the one closest to my building, was out, just a dark spot where the light should have been. And standing in that patch of darkness, just barely visible, was someone. I froze, heart pounding in my chest. It was hard to make out any details, but I could tell it was a person. They were standing perfectly still, just on the edge of the shadows, like they were waiting for something. I stared at them for what felt like an eternity, hoping they'd leave, but they didn't. They just stood there, motionless, watching. The burner phone buzzed again, making me jump. New message. Close the curtains. I felt my stomach twist. I didn't want to do it. I wanted to keep watching, to make sure that whoever or whatever was out there stayed where they were. But my instincts told me to follow the instructions. With shaking hands, I let the curtain fall back into place, plunging the room into darkness. I backed away from the window, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The phone buzzed again. Good. Do not open the curtains again. I sat down on the couch, my legs feeling like jelly. I was in way over my head. Whoever these people were, they weren't just some random scammers. They knew exactly where I was, what I was doing, and now, apparently, they were watching me, waiting for me to slip up. The worst part, I still didn't know what they wanted from me. Around 6:30 a.m., just as the sky was starting to lighten, I heard a noise that made my skin crawl, the sound of my doorknob turning. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then it happened again, a slow, deliberate twist, like someone was testing the lock. I grabbed the closest thing I could find, a kitchen knife, and stood perfectly still, my heart thundering in my chest. I didn't dare move. The knob turned one more time, and then everything went silent. No footsteps, no knock, just silence. I stood there for what felt like hours, waiting to hear something, anything, but there was nothing. Whoever had tried to open my door was gone. I checked the peephole, but the hallway outside was empty. I didn't know if that made me feel better or worse. By the time the sun was fully up, I felt like I was losing my mind. I hadn't slept in over 24 hours. Every sound, every shadow felt like a threat. I tried to think logically. Maybe I could contact the police, tell them someone was stalking me. But what would I say? That I took a freelance job on the dark web, and now I think I'm being watched. They'd laugh me out of the station. The burner phone buzzed again. This time, it was a phone call. I stared at the screen, heart racing. I didn't want to answer it. Every instinct told me to throw the phone out the window and run, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. With a deep breath, I answered the call. The same low, deliberate voice from before spoke. "Open your front door. Bring the phone." My heart stopped. I knew I couldn't disobey. I had no idea what would happen if I refused, but I wasn't willing to find out. Knife in one hand, phone in the other, I slowly approached the door. My legs felt like they were made of lead. Every step was a struggle. When I reached the door, I hesitated for just a moment. My hand hovering over the lock, I pressed my ear against the door, listening. Silence. With a shaking hand, I unlocked the deadbolt and slowly pulled the door open. The hallway was empty. No people, no sound, just the dim hum of the building's fluorescent lights. But sitting on the floor, right outside my door, was another package. This one was smaller, just a plain white envelope, sealed with a strip of black tape. The voice on the phone spoke again. "Take the envelope. Close the door." I did as I was told, my hands trembling. I locked the door behind me and sat back down at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope. For a moment, I just sat there, trying to convince myself this was all some kind of elaborate prank, but the fear in my gut told me otherwise. With a deep breath, I tore the black tape off the envelope and dumped the contents onto the table. Inside was a single photograph. It was a picture of me, standing at my window, looking out at the parking lot, right before I closed the curtain. My hand started shaking so bad, I almost dropped the photo. I felt like I was going to be sick. The phone buzzed one last time. "Await further instructions." I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photo of myself, heart hammering in my chest. Someone had taken it from outside my apartment. Right at the moment I peeked through the curtain, my brain was screaming at me to leave, but my body refused to move. I could feel the walls closing in, the panic rising like a flood I couldn't hold back. This wasn't a game. Whoever these people were, they weren't just messing with me. They knew where I was. They knew what I was doing, exactly when I was doing it. And now, they were making sure I understood that they were always one step ahead. Then, the phone buzzed again. Another message. "You have 30 minutes to complete the next task. Do not fail." Attached to the message was a new set of instructions. The message read, 1. Take the burner phone and the envelope. 2. Leave your apartment. Walk to the alley behind the building. 3. Do not speak to anyone. Do not look back. 4. Place the envelope in the trash bin. 5. Wait. I stared at the instructions, cold sweat running down my back. There was no way this was going to end well. Every part of me was screaming to call the cops, to find someone, anyone, to help. But deep down, I knew it was too late for that. These people had me cornered, and now I was caught in their web with no way out. It was almost 7 a.m. by the time I worked up the courage to leave the apartment. The morning light was starting to seep through the curtains, but the world outside still felt eerily quiet, like the calm before a storm. I slipped the photo back into the envelope, grabbed the burner phone, and made my way to the door. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the lock. Every sound, the groan of the door hinge, the echo of my footsteps, felt deafening. When I stepped into the hallway, it was empty, just like before. No signs of life, just me, the envelope in hand, and the weight of those instructions pressing down on me like a vice. The walk to the alley behind the building felt like the longest of my life. The streets were empty, save for the occasional car in the distance. The city felt unreal, like I was moving through a dream or a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I kept my head down, just like the instructions said. No eye contact, no distractions. I walked slowly, deliberately, as if each step might trigger something terrible if I made a wrong move. When I reached the alley, I spotted the trash bin tucked into the shadows, exactly where the message said it would be. My heart was pounding in my chest as I approached it. I looked around, just to make sure I was alone. Nothing, just silence. I slipped the envelope into the bin, my breath fogging in the cool morning air. And then I waited. The minutes dragged by in eerie silence. My eyes flicked between the shadows in the alley, waiting for something, anything, to happen. But nothing came. No sounds, no cars, just the distant hum of the city waking up. Then, just as I was about to lose my nerve, the burner phone buzzed in my hand. A new message. Stay still. Do not move. My stomach twisted. I wanted to run, but I was too afraid to disobey. I stood there in the alley, feeling like a puppet with invisible strings, waiting for the next command. That's when I heard it. A car engine, low and steady, rolling down the alley behind me. I kept my eyes forward, frozen in place, as the car pulled up alongside the trash bin. I could feel the driver's eyes on me, but I didn't dare turn my head. The car door opened with a soft click. Someone got out. Their footsteps crunched against the gravel as they approached the bin. I could hear them rummaging inside, pulling the envelope free. Then the footsteps stopped. Right behind me. I held my breath, every muscle in my body locked in place, waiting for whatever came next. A hand brushed against my shoulder, just a light tap, but it felt like an electric shock. Good, a voice whispered. It was low, calm, just like the one on the phone. The same voice. The man behind me lingered for a moment, as if he was savoring the moment. Then, without another word, he turned and got back into the car. The engine rumbled to life, and the car rolled slowly down the alley, disappearing around the corner. The phone buzzed one final time. Well done. You are free to go. I stared at the message, disbelief washing over me. That was it. I could just go. After everything they'd put me through, they were just going to let me walk away. I stood there for a few minutes, trying to make sense of it all. My legs felt weak, my brain buzzing with unanswered questions. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But all I could do was stand there, paralyzed by fear and confusion. Finally, I forced myself to move. I stumbled out of the alley, back into the street, my legs barely able to carry me. I didn't care where I was going, only that I was getting the hell away from that alley. When I finally made it back to my apartment, I locked the door behind me and collapsed on the couch. my entire body trembling. It felt like I'd just escaped a nightmare, except the nightmare was real, and I had no idea what any of it meant. I checked the burner phone one last time, just to make sure. No new messages, no calls, nothing. I threw the phone into the sink and smashed it with a hammer. Then I took my laptop, wiped the hard drive, and got rid of everything. The files, the job board, the money, all of it. I didn't care about the Bitcoin. I didn't care about the rent. All I wanted was to put as much distance between me and this nightmare as possible. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I've been trying to piece together what happened, trying to understand what I got myself into. But the truth is, I'll probably never know. Who were those people? What was the point of the job? And why let me go? I haven't received any more messages. No strange knocks at my door. No cars parked outside. It's like they vanished the moment the job was done. But sometimes, late at night, I can't shake the feeling that they're still out there, watching, waiting. And the worst part, I still don't know what was in that envelope, or why they needed me to deliver it. Maybe it's better that way. Maybe some things are better left unknown. I found a playlist on the dark web. The songs describe things happening in my life. So, this story is weird, even for me. I don't really post much on Reddit, but after everything that happened, I feel like I need to get this off my chest. If you've ever gone down a rabbit hole you knew you shouldn't, then you'll understand where I'm coming from. I just didn't think I'd stumble onto this. I was bored. That's how it all began. Just me sitting at my desk, scrolling through stuff I had no business looking at. You know how it goes. One video leads to another, and suddenly you're neck deep in conspiracy theories about lizard people running the government. But even after a few hours of that, I still couldn't sleep. So I did something stupid. I've always been a bit of a tech nerd, and yeah, I dabbled with the dark web here and there. Nothing major. I wasn't buying stolen credit cards or anything, just browsing. The allure of forbidden knowledge, I guess. You hear about secret forums and weird marketplaces where people sell bizarre things, and curiosity gets the better of you. Anyway, that night I came across a link I hadn't seen before. It was buried in a forum about obscure media. Stuff like banned TV episodes, ARGs, things like that. The link just said, for those who want to hear the soundtrack of their own lives. Weird, right? I probably should have noped out right there, but you know how it goes. When you're too curious for your own good, you push forward. The link led to a weird, bare bones website. Just a black background with white text. No logos, no ads, just a single button. Generate playlist. I hesitated, finger hovering over the mouse. Something about it felt off. But then I thought, what's the worst that could happen? A bunch of underground indie songs. Some creepy ambient music. Nothing life-changing. Or so I thought. So, I clicked it. A playlist popped up instantly. 10 songs, all with titles that didn't make much sense at first. There were no artists listed. Just titles like Tuesday, 3:47 a.m. Cold Milk, Left Out. Unanswered Call, 3 Missed. Footsteps in the Hallway. Honestly, I thought it was some kind of joke. The titles felt too specific, like someone was trying hard to be cryptic and artsy. But here's the thing. The more I looked at the playlist, the more something about it bothered me. Specifically, the first song, Tuesday, 3:47 a.m. That's weirdly specific, right? I mean, sure, people name songs random things all the time, but this hit differently. You see, That night was Tuesday, and the time when I clicked the link. Yeah, exactly 3:47 a.m. I laughed it off at first, telling myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe the site was programmed to track your system clock and generate a matching song title to spook people. I tried playing the song out of curiosity, but it didn't load. The audio player was just a blank, glitchy bar. Annoying, but whatever. Still, the whole thing put me in a weird mood. I closed the tab, powered down my computer, and crawled into bed, feeling uneasy for reasons I couldn't quite explain. That's when the first weird thing happened. At exactly 3:47 a.m., not a second earlier or later, I heard this sharp click from the kitchen, like someone flicking a switch. Now, I live alone. The only thing that makes a sound like that in my place is the fridge light, the kind of distinct snap it makes when you open the door. I sat up in bed, straining to listen. My heart was doing that thing where it thumps in your ears, making every little noise seem bigger. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I didn't close the fridge all the way, and it popped open on its own. No big deal. But as I sat there, staring into the dark hallway outside my bedroom, I had this sinking feeling that I wasn't alone. I could swear I heard soft footsteps, not heavy or hurried, just slow, deliberate, as if someone was carefully placing each foot down, testing the creaky spots in the floor. I wanted to get up and check, but my body felt frozen. I just sat there, gripping the blanket, staring at my door until the noises stopped. Eventually, I managed to convince myself it was my imagination. Maybe I dreamed it, or maybe the playlist thing had gotten into my head more than I thought. Either way, I was too freaked out to sleep, so I stayed awake until morning, scrolling through my phone until the sun came up. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, I went to the kitchen and, yup, the fridge door was slightly open. Just a crack, enough to trigger the light inside. And on the counter, there was a carton of milk. I don't even like milk. I hadn't bought any in weeks, but there it was, sitting out like someone had poured a glass and left it behind. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I checked my phone to see if anyone had been in contact with me. No texts, no calls, no signs that anyone had broken in or tampered with anything else in the apartment. Then I remembered the second song on the playlist, Cold Milk Left Out. I felt this cold knot form in my stomach, like my body was warning me something was very, very wrong, but I still tried to brush it off. Coincidences happen, right? A glitchy website, a power of suggestion, maybe? I mean, there had to be an explanation, but no matter how much I tried to convince myself, I couldn't shake the unease that settled over me like a heavy blanket. Later that afternoon, I decided to check the playlist again. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I played the songs, I'd realize it was all just a harmless prank. When I clicked on the link again, the playlist loaded, just like before. But this time, a new song had appeared at the top. You Shouldn't Have Come Back. I stared at it for a long time, feeling the prickling sensation of fear crawl up my spine. I hadn't noticed that song before. Had the playlist updated itself? Or had I just missed it earlier? I clicked it. The song wouldn't play. Just like the others, the audio player stayed frozen, silent, glitchy. But this time, there was a brief flicker on my screen, like a single frame of a video had glitched through. It was too fast to catch, but I swear I saw something. A dark figure standing in a hallway. Or maybe it was just a trick of the light on my screen. I tried refreshing the page, but the link had disappeared. Just gone. The playlist. the songs, everything, like it had never existed. At this point, I started feeling like I was losing my mind. It had to be some kind of prank, right? Someone messing with me. But who? And how? Then, that night, my phone buzzed with a notification. I unlocked it and saw a missed call from an unknown number. The timestamp? 3:47 a.m. And the song title flashed in my head. Unanswered call, 3 missed. That's when I realized this wasn't a coincidence. Something or someone was watching me. The next morning felt wrong. You know when you wake up after a nightmare, and for a few seconds, you're not sure if you're still dreaming or not. That's exactly how I felt. I tried to shake it off. Told myself I'd overthought the playlist thing. Sleep deprivation messes with your head, right? Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing about the milk and the missed call. Except when I checked my phone again, the call was still there. 3:47 a.m. No voicemail, no text, just unknown number. That should have been the point where I threw my phone across the room and left it alone. But instead, like an idiot, I called the number back. I don't know what I expected. A scam bot, maybe? Some prankster on the other end laughing at me. Nope. It rang once, then cut off. Just dead silence. But here's the part that really freaked me out. Right after the call disconnected, I got a notification saying I had a new voicemail. My stomach dropped. I opened my voicemail, thumb hovering over the play button. Part of me wanted to delete it without listening, but I had to know. I hit play and held the phone to my ear. There was no voice, just this weird humming noise. It was low and steady, like the kind of hum you hear from old machinery. It went on for about 10 seconds, then cut to silence. No other sounds, no voices in the background. Just nothing. I should have been relieved. Maybe it was a glitch, or some spam robocall messing up. But instead, that weird humming stuck with me. It wasn't a noise I recognized, and for some reason, it gave me the same creepy feeling as the playlist did. Familiar, but off. Like it was meant to remind me of something buried in the back of my brain. And then, just as I was about to delete the message, I heard a noise from my apartment. A soft thump, like something falling over. It came from my living room. I froze, phone still clutched in my hand, every muscle in my body locking up. I wanted to tell myself it was nothing. A book falling off the coffee table, maybe. But in that moment, I knew it wasn't. Something was different. There was a weight in the air, like the entire apartment was watching me. The playlist. I couldn't stop thinking about it, specifically the next song title, Footsteps in the Hallway. I stayed perfectly still, straining to hear any movement. Nothing for a long time. Then, just as I was about to get up and check, I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't loud, just soft, almost hesitant, like bare feet padding slowly across the wooden floor. I wanted to tell myself it was the pipes, or maybe an old floorboard shifting, but the sound was too distinct, too deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. The footsteps were coming from the hallway right outside my bedroom. Now, I don't know if you've ever been paralyzed with fear, but let me tell you, it's not like in the movies. My brain was screaming at me to do something, to get up, to grab my phone, to hide. But my body wouldn't move. All I could do was sit there, frozen, as those soft taps came closer. Then, they stopped, right outside my bedroom door. I froze. The voice on the recording wasn't some creepy sample or pre-recorded message. It was my voice. I yanked the earbud out, nearly dropping my phone in the process. My whole body felt ice cold. How the hell had they done that? How did they have a recording of me? I hadn't said those words. Not today, not ever. But it was unmistakable. That was my voice, layered beneath the static like a whisper from another version of me. I stared at the phone, my thumb hovering over the stop button. The song kept playing, even without the earbud, the faint hum of static leaking from the phone speaker. And then the lyrics, if you could even call them that, shifted again. Don't turn around. My breath caught in my throat. I felt it then, that presence. You know the feeling when someone's standing behind you, the way the air changes, the way the hairs on your arms stand on end. That's exactly how I felt, sitting there on the couch. I squeezed my eyes shut, every muscle locked in place. I just knew, that if I turned around, I would see something I wasn't supposed to, something I couldn't unsee. The song played on, whispering in my voice again, don't move. And then I heard it, a soft shuffle of movement. Right behind me, I sat frozen, the phone slipping from my hand and landing with a soft thud on the couch. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. There shouldn't have been anyone else in the apartment. I had locked the door, double-checked it. The presence loomed closer, heavy and cold, like something standing just inches away from me. I could feel it there, hovering, waiting. The phone buzzed on the cushion beside me, the screen lighting up with a new message. I didn't want to look at it, but I couldn't help myself. Slowly, I turned my head just enough to glance at the notification. It was another message from that same unknown number. Say hello. The words made my stomach churn. My throat was dry, and I could barely breathe. The presence behind me hadn't moved, still lingering there, waiting. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to gather the courage to do something, anything. I couldn't just sit there forever, paralyzed with fear. I had to move. I had to. That's when my phone buzzed again. Another message. It's getting closer. My hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms. I could hear it now. The softest sound of breathing, shallow and quiet, like it was right next to my ear. And then, it spoke. It wasn't a growl or a moan. It was a voice, low, deliberate, and all too human. I know you can hear me. My heart stopped. The voice wasn't unfamiliar. It wasn't some random stranger's voice. It was mine. I shot up from the couch, spinning around in a blind panic. My phone clattered to the floor, the screen flickering wildly. But when I turned to face whatever was behind me, there was nothing, just the empty, dimly lit living room. I stood there, chest heaving, heart racing, trying to make sense of what just happened. I looked around frantically, checking the windows, the corners of the room, anywhere someone could hide. But I was alone, completely, utterly alone. My phone buzzed again, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. I snatched it off the floor, fingers fumbling to unlock it. Another message had come through. This one was different. It wasn't a sentence, just coordinates, a string of numbers, like latitude and longitude. I stared at the message, my mind racing. What the hell was this? A prank? A setup? Or something worse? Against every shred of common sense, I copied the coordinates and pasted them into Google Maps. The map zoomed in, revealing a location just a few miles away from my apartment. It was a park, a small, nondescript place I'd driven past 100 times but never visited. And then, as I stared at the location on my phone, the playlist updated again. A new song appeared at the top, Come Alone. I sat there, phone clutched in my hand, trying to make sense of what was happening. The messages, The playlist, the voice, none of it made any sense. But the thing that scared me the most, it all felt personal. Like whoever was behind this wasn't just messing with me for fun. They knew me, my habits, my voice, my location. This wasn't some random prank. It was targeted, deliberate, and I had a feeling that if I didn't play along, things would get worse. I glanced toward the front door, heart pounding. Every instinct told me not to go, but the messages, the songs, they felt like a warning, a countdown ticking away. I had to know what was waiting for me at that park. Before I could talk myself out of it, I grabbed my jacket, slipped on my shoes, and headed for the door. As I reached for the lock, my phone buzzed one last time. The message was simple. "We'll be waiting." I stared at the words, my hand hovering over the lock. A knot formed in my stomach, but I turned the lock anyway. As I stepped into the cold night air, my phone chimed with one final update from the playlist. A new song appeared at the top. "If you leave, don't come back." The walk to the park felt longer than it should have. It was only a couple miles away, but the streets felt different tonight, quieter than usual, like the entire neighborhood was holding its breath. Every time I passed a dark alley or an empty lot, I caught myself glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see someone or something following me. But there was nothing. Just the sound of my shoes scraping the sidewalk and the faint hum of streetlights overhead. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, that this was all some elaborate prank or social experiment. But the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. When I finally reached the park, it was empty. Of course it was. No kids, no late-night joggers, not even the usual drunk guy passed out on a bench. Just rows of trees casting long, skeletal shadows across the dirt paths. I stood at the entrance for a minute, debating whether to turn back. I still had time to walk away, pretend none of this ever happened. But before I could take a step, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. Another message from the unknown number. "You're almost there. Keep walking." The knot in my stomach tightened. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, thumping so hard it made my vision blur for a second. But I knew there was no point in turning back now. I took a deep breath and stepped into the park. The path wound deeper into the trees, each step kicking up damp leaves that crunched underfoot. The air smelled like wet dirt and rotting wood. My phone's flashlight didn't help much, just a narrow beam of light that made the darkness beyond it seem even thicker. I kept walking, my heart pounding louder with each step. The park was too quiet. No wind, no rustling leaves, not even the chirp of insects. Just my footsteps and the occasional buzz of my phone vibrating with more messages. I ignored the messages at first, trying to focus on putting one foot in front of the other. But curiosity got the better of me. I stopped, took out my phone, and checked the latest text. "Don't stop. It's watching." My chest tightened. I shined my flashlight around the trees, half expecting to see a shadow lurking just out of sight. But there was nothing, just empty paths and trees swaying ever so slightly in the breeze that hadn't been there a minute ago. Another buzz. "Almost there. Don't look behind you." A chill ran down my spine. I tried to keep moving, but my legs felt heavy, like my body was fighting against me. Every instinct screamed to turn around, to look and see if someone or something was following me. But I clenched my jaw and kept walking. It felt like hours had passed when the path finally ended in a small clearing. In the center of the clearing was a single park bench, and on that bench there was something waiting for me. It was a phone. Not just any phone, my phone. I stared at it, my heart racing. It was identical to the one I was holding, down to the cracks on the screen and the sticker I'd slapped on the back a few months ago. I held my own phone up to the light, half expecting the one on the bench to disappear like some weird glitch. But it didn't. It just sat there, screen dark, waiting for me. I approached it slowly, every nerve in my body screaming at me to leave, to get the hell out of there. But I reached the bench and picked up the phone, my fingers trembling. As soon as I touched it, the screen lit up. The playlist app opened by itself, and a new song appeared at the top. Look up. I froze, the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. I stared at the words, feeling the weight of the message settle in my chest like a stone. Look up. My hand started to shake. I didn't want to. I knew that whatever was waiting for me above wasn't something I was supposed to see. But the compulsion was overwhelming, like invisible hands were forcing my chin to lift. And then, against every instinct, I looked up. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The sky above the clearing was wrong. It wasn't just dark. It was blank. No stars, no moon, no clouds. Just a vast, endless black void, like someone had erased the night sky entirely. And in that void, something was moving. It was slow at first, just a vague shape shifting in the darkness, like ink spreading through water. But the more I stared, the more the shape began to solidify, forming long, spindly limbs that stretched impossibly far across the sky. It had no face, no eyes, but I could feel it watching me. It was massive, stretching beyond the edges of the clearing, its limbs weaving through the trees like roots burrowing into the earth. And as I stared up at it, a voice whispered in my ear, soft, familiar, and impossible. You're too late. The phone in my hand buzzed again. A new message appeared on the screen, but I didn't need to read it to know what it said. I glanced down, and there it was. It's behind you. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I could feel it there, right behind me, its presence pressing against my back like a cold breath on my neck. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying that this was some kind of nightmare, that I would wake up in my bed and everything would be normal again. But when I opened my eyes, the thing in the sky was still there, and the presence behind me hadn't moved. The phone buzzed one last time, and I knew I had no choice. I slowly turned around, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. And there, standing at the edge of the clearing, was me. It was like looking into a mirror. Same clothes, same shoes, same terrified expression. But the other version of me, the one standing there, wasn't scared. It smiled. And that smile was wrong. Too wide, too perfect, like someone wearing a mask of my face. Before I could react, the other me took a step forward, holding out its hand. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might stop. Come with me, it whispered, the voice soft and familiar. My voice, but twisted, warped. It's better if you don't fight. I shook my head, panic rising in my chest. What do you want? I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. The other me tilted its head, still smiling that awful smile. You shouldn't have listened, it said, but now it's too late. It stepped closer, and the phone in my hand buzzed again. I glanced down, my breath hitching in my throat. The final song on the playlist appeared. This is the last one. I looked up, and the other me was right there, face to face, inches away. Its eyes were dark, empty pits, and as it leaned in closer, I realized I could hear that same faint humming noise from before. It wasn't coming from the phone. It was coming from me. The humming grew louder, drilling into my ears like it was coming from inside my skull. The other me, if that's what it even was, stood inches away, its face frozen in that horrible, wrong smile. My legs felt like jelly, and my breath came out in shallow, ragged bursts. I tried to step back, but the thing moved in perfect sync, as if it knew exactly what I was about to do before I did. It didn't just look like me. It moved like me, thought like me. I glanced down at the phone again, hoping, praying for some clue about what to do next. The screen flickered, and the playlist glitched. Then, just as I was about to give up, a new message appeared. Switch. My heart stopped. Switch? What the hell did that mean? Before I could make sense of it, the other me's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist with an icy grip. I tried to yank away, but it held me tight, stronger than anything that looked human should have been. Its voice was soft, almost sympathetic. Don't struggle. It's easier this way. The phone buzzed again in my hand, vibrating so violently it nearly slipped from my grip. A new notification popped up. Press play or stay forever. Panic surged through me, and I fumbled with the phone, trying to tap on the final song. My thumb shook so badly that I almost missed, but just as the other me pulled me closer, I hit play. For a moment, everything went silent. Even the humming stopped, like the whole world had taken one final breath and was holding it. Then the song started. It wasn't static this time. It wasn't weird noises or eerie whispers. It was a recording of a voice. My voice. You shouldn't have come here, it said, calm and cold. But now you have to take someone's place. The other me grinned wider, impossibly wide, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Its grip on my wrist tightened, and I felt my whole body go numb, like I was being pulled out of myself, inch by inch. My vision blurred, and the world around me seemed to stretch and fold, warping like a broken mirror. And then I understood. The playlist wasn't just some prank or a game. It was a trap, a loop. Someone always had to be on the other side, waiting, watching. And the moment I pressed play, I'd agreed to take their place. Everything happened in a blur. 1 second, I was standing there, trapped in the other me's grip. The next, I felt myself falling. It wasn't like falling through air. It was like falling through reality, slipping between cracks in the world I hadn't even known existed. The other me's face twisted into a grin, and it whispered, "See you on the other side." Then, everything went black. I woke up on the park bench, gasping for air. My head was pounding, and my whole body felt heavy, like I'd just run a marathon. For a moment, I thought it was over, that I'd imagined the whole thing. But when I reached for my phone, I knew the truth. It wasn't my phone anymore. The screen was cracked in a different pattern, and the playlist was gone, replaced by someone else's name at the top. I stared at it, feeling cold dread seep into my bones. The new playlist had only one song. Welcome to the other side. I tried to stand, but my body felt strange, wrong. I stumbled to a nearby puddle, leaned over, and looked at my reflection in the water. It wasn't my face staring back at me. It was someone else's. I staggered back, heart racing, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. My phone buzzed in my hand, and I instinctively checked the notification. It was from an unknown number. Your turn. And that's when I knew. The only way out was to find someone else, to leave the playlist where they could find it, to let them fall into the same trap. Someone had passed it on to me. and now it was my responsibility to do the same. The phone buzzed again, and a link appeared in the message. Generate playlist. I stared at it, frozen, knowing what it meant. I didn't have a choice. Not if I wanted to escape. My hand shook as I tapped the link, and the screen filled with a new list of songs. 10 titles, just like before. But this time, they weren't about me. They were about someone else. Friday night, no signal. A voice you didn't recognize. The door you forgot to lock. Your name whispered in the dark. I swallowed hard, the weight of what I had to do settling over me like a heavy cloak. The rules were simple. Find someone, pass the playlist along, let them take my place. The song titles flickered on the screen, waiting, and a new message buzzed through. You know what to do. I stood there in the middle of the park, clutching the phone, like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. The playlist had started with me, but it wasn't going to end with me. It never ended. I took a deep breath, opened my contacts, and tapped on the first name I saw. A friend. Someone who would never expect this from me. Someone who would trust me. And with a shaking hand, I sent them the link. The playlist had a new target, and I knew that soon enough, they would hear the first song, just like I did. The title of the first track blinked across the screen as the message was delivered. It all starts here. I slipped the phone into my pocket and walked away, the buzzing streetlights overhead flickering as I disappeared into the night. The playlist had moved on, and I was finally free. For now.